Hello, friends. Welcome to the LeggLife podcast. My name is Adam.
My name is Sherri.
Sherri Beth, what episode is this?
86.
It is. It's been a while. We know. And the last episode we uploaded was one where I sat down with my mom on one of my visits to Pueblo. And this episode is where Sherri and I sit down with my mom.
Yeah.
We were just down there in Colorado with her, with my brother, with my sister-in-law. And before we left, we thought, you know what? Let's sit down and record another podcast with Mom.
Yeah.
And so, Sherri Beth, what they're about to hear is that entire conversation. So, friends, here you go. All right, everybody. Sherri and I are here in Pueblo, Colorado. Actually, for only another hour or two.
Yeah.
We have been here for a week, spending time with Mom. My brother Ron, his wife Cecilia left just a little bit ago. And before we leave, we thought that one thing that would be fun to do is to sit down with Mom and record another podcast. She and I recorded one last time I was down here.
It was a big hit.
It was a big hit. The feedback that you guys have given has been amazing on that. And so some of this is a little bit selfish for me because I'm capturing stories and advice that I want forever, and you guys just get to listen into. And the approach for this podcast is, okay, so let me back up. My mom has been probably over the course of my life the primary person that I have gone to for advice. Advice on like young Adam just realizing that girls exist and getting into dating. How the heck do I do that?
Maybe don't have cooties.
Yeah, maybe girls don't have cooties. To like figuring out how to be an adult. How do I handle money? How do I make life decisions? How do I choose what job I want to do? What do I, you know what I mean? Like everything in life, my mom's always primarily who I've gone to for advice. And I thought it would be fun to sit down and kind of have a mom's advice episode. And so what Sherri and I are going to do is just kind of ask Mom a whole bunch of questions that relate to everything about life and marriage and kids and family and money and decisions and just the sort of things that you would go to Mom for advice on. And that's what we're going to do. Mom, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so let's start with the kid question. So obviously we don't have kids, can't have kids, but a lot of our friends, a lot of the listeners maybe are considering starting families, will one day start families.
Already have families. Yep.
You raised two very, I don't know the word I'd use to describe Ron and I.
You're wonderful husbands. I'm so proud of how you treat your wives.
Thank you. I was gonna say rambunctious boys.
I was thinking
Yes.
rambunctious. Yep.
Well, you were that growing up. It's the end result that the adult Adam, the adult Ron. It's I'm just so proud of the husbands you have become.
But that didn't just happen.
No, it didn't. As a matter of fact, when you were like 5 or so, after your dad and I split up, we had very different. He was taking you to a church that had you convinced that I was going to hell.
Yeah, that's right.
And you would come home on Monday and it didn't matter what I said because I was going to hell anyway.
Right.
And I would go into the bathroom and cry. Every Monday was horrible.
Of course, because I came back from this like brainwashed church.
Yes.
Yep.
And once I decided that you needed to see the effect your words and actions had on me, I quit going to the bathroom and just cried right in front of you, and that just changed everything.
Yeah.
I saw that you had empathy. I saw that you didn't want to hurt me like that.
Sure.
And
also, what a shitty church. Right? Like, let's just pause there. Right. Like, what a shitty church that's like teaching kids to go home and tell their parents who aren't in church that they're going to hell.
They're going to hell.
Right?
You know, I don't know if you remember this, but I took some toothpicks. We sat at the table one day, and I took some toothpicks, and I had something in the center, a candle or something, and I said, let's pretend this is God. And then I put the toothpicks all around to make a sunshine sort of thing. And I said, and let's pretend this is your path that you're on. Mm-hmm. And look, Adam, it's leading right straight to God. Mm-hmm. And that's a wonderful thing. And then I pointed to a different toothpick and I said, well, this is the path I'm on. It's not the same as yours, but it too is leading right straight to God. And that's a wonderful thing. And do you remember that?
I don't.
You don't.
I was going to say, I already got a fence tattoo. I'm not getting a toothpick tattoo. So if you're trying to influence my next tattoo, it's not going to work, Mom.
It just made a difference. I mean, it made it, as a 5 or 6 year old little boy, you understood that. It just made sense to you that whatever path I happened to be on was okay because it was leading to God. So you quit with the...
You're going to hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think leaving the brainwashed church also helped.
Yes.
So let me back up because you kind of went off running, Mom.
Okay, sorry.
No, don't be sorry. You have cancer. You're allowed to do that. There's a lot of grace in this. Advice to a young couple who is maybe about to have their first kid. They're wondering, how in the world do I raise like good kids in this crazy, crazy world? Like, what's your advice on parenting?
Make sure they know they're loved is the biggest thing, I think. And that was something that I was bound and determined because I never heard that growing up. I never felt that growing up. And so that was my main goal, was for you kids to know you were loved.
Yeah.
And it's not just the words, the actions have to be there as well. And another thing was, I was 17 and pregnant. I was 18 with a child and by myself.
Yeah.
And I knew that giving you kids the confidence to know that once you're an adult, you can stand on your own 2 feet, and it made you not only confident that you could stand on your own 2 feet, it made you excited to get to that point. So I think those are the 2 things I would say mostly. Just make sure your kids know that they're loved. And there are going to be days that feel like they're never going to end. That maybe...
Every day wasn't rainbows and sunshine with your boys? I don't believe that.
But the years go by so fast that... And each year is different, and it changes, and there are different struggles and different obstacles and different joys. But through it all, just to know that you're loved was the big thing for me.
Yeah, I think that's something that, even going through your health journey, I was telling a friend recently, and she was kind of asking how I'm doing with all this, and I said, I'm actually doing okay. And the nice thing is that I can't imagine how hard this would be if you didn't know where you stood with your parent. Or if, you know what I mean? Like, there's a piece that I have in all of this, because at the end of the day, no matter what happens, like, I know my mom loves me and I know my mom's proud of me, right? Like, it's not a question. And it makes hard things easier. And I think it makes a lot of life easier. And it's interesting because, so in the anti-trafficking work I do, there's an older lady who is in California who's done this work for years and years. And she was asked a while ago what the most important thing, like what's the thing that we could do the most that would stop trafficking, that would affect the next generation. And she's like, it's simple. It's 2 phrases. That every kid who's vulnerable, who's at risk, every kid who's growing up would know 2 things. Number 1, they're loved. Number 2, they matter.
Yep.
Those 2 things, that if every child knows those, things change. And I feel like for my brother, and I know if he was here, he'd say the same thing, those were never questions to us. Like, we knew that.
And there's no such thing as a perfect parent.
Sure.
We all make mistakes. We all have things we, in hindsight, might have done differently. And there are times that I've made mistakes and I know it and I've owned up to it and sat you down and said, we're going to do things differently. Sorry about how this turned out, but we're going to do things different now. So to own up to whatever mistakes you make is a huge thing, and it makes you be human to your kids. It's when you were little, you thought I had eyes in the back of my head, that I was somehow magical in that way.
I know.
But to know that I'm a human being who does not always live up to the standard that I would give myself, to own up to that, I think is a huge thing, and it turns something that you're doing wrong into a closer bond with your kids, because you've owned up to it and you're going to do things in a better way now.
So as a mom, I mean, you've been a mom for like 56 years.
I know it.
Right?
Yeah.
My brother's 56 years old.
Yeah.
56 years of parenting. What's been the biggest, what's your biggest joy of parenting? What's your biggest takeaway?
Oh gosh, when both of you left home, it's your sense of humor that I just so missed. We never had extra money
Right.
for extra things, but things like we had tennis rackets and tennis balls, and the tennis court was free. We went to the park and swinging.
I remember a lot of games, just like
games.
Yep.
We laughed every day.
Yeah,
we
for
played
sure.
games and laughed every day.
Yeah.
And the games came from the secondhand store, and
Didn't always have all the pieces.
So you just make do.
Yeah, exactly right.
but we played games, we
Yeah.
laughed, and so money is not a required thing for a happy home. As a matter of fact, I know when Ronnie and I first moved to Alaska, our first dinner in our first apartment was so meager. It was on the top of a upside down cardboard box that we had emptied from moving, with a towel over top of it. We had fried bologna and sliced tomatoes, and I think a can of green beans. I mean, it was meager, but it was memorable.
Yeah.
We just lit a candle, we made it memorable. And that's an important thing.
I think that there's a belief, maybe now more than ever, that in order to raise healthy kids or happy kids or have a good home, that you have to have all of these big things, right? You have to do, I can remember maybe 1 or 2 vacations we ever went on. We didn't have money to go on vacations.
No, we didn't.
But I could tell you exactly what you said 100 times. I could drive you around tennis courts in Anchorage and tell you hilarious stories,
Yeah.
And I just think it was more about the family and environment you created for us than having all of the stuff and all of the things.
Well, I sometimes had to work a job and a half,
Yeah.
which meant not as much time with you as I would have preferred. And I called it my Mr. Rogers theory of raising you. Millions of kids loved Mr. Rogers, yet he only spent a half hour a day, 5 days a week with them.
It's true.
But his approach was, oh my gosh, I couldn't wait to see you. I couldn't wait to spend this time with you. And so to make whatever time you have important to them, to make you feel like you're a priority. And you were, even though I had to be at work, it was because you are a priority. And I know you got used to eating 3 meals a day and liked having your own room. And
So selfish.
yeah.
But even, you made me feel like a priority even when you were working and not home. I think about the stack of Good Morning Adam notes.
Oh, yeah.
We still have.
We still have them at home.
Yeah.
For years and years when Mom wasn't home. So when I woke up in the morning, some days Mom would already have left for work. There were also days that I'd come home from school and Mom was going to be working late that night. And so sometimes it would be Good Morning Adam, sometimes it'd be Good Evening Adam. And
Mostly Good Morning.
Mostly Good Morning, yep. And you would leave me these notes. And the notes weren't just like, hey, don't forget to pick up your socks. They were also affirmations about who I was and why I mattered and why I was important and how much you loved me. Along with, hey, don't forget to pick up your socks.
And don't forget, today's
trash.
Tuesday news day at school. Or
That's right. You have football
Yeah.
practice after school. Make sure you know, it was all of that kind of stuff. And so even though you weren't there, like I have still to this day a stack of notes that I was a priority, you know. So last, I think, parenting question: Who's a better kid, me or my brother? Okay, maybe not. We won't answer that.
Your brother's been a better kid longer than you have.
That is such an out because he's 13 years older than me. That is such a politician answer.
And I get these questions from the two of you. So who do you love the most? And I've been loving Ronnie longer.
It's a good answer.
Yep.
It is funny though, because I know that like I'll call you on Mother's Day, and like the first question, like, "Hey, have you heard from my brother yet?" It's like, "Oh yeah, also happy Mother's Day." It's just so funny. So kind of like moving through life. That's sort of a lot of parenting. Obviously, we could touch more on that. Let's talk like dating stuff now. So you raised 2 boys. We each went through that whole scene.
Both of your boys treat their wives like queens.
And that makes me so proud of you. I'm just so proud of the husbands both of you are. And I remember, and I think it was your first year of high school, maybe you were still in junior high.
No, it was high school.
It was in high school when you and 2 of your friends were over and you were asking about girls and dating. And my advice to you...
Well, just real quick, let me pause, because me and those friends didn't really have good examples of healthy masculinity, right? Or like healthy dating, or how do you do this? I mean, here's the thing. Guys talk in locker rooms, guys talk at school, but what guys talk about at school is completely unhealthy.
Right.
Right? It's completely toxic. And so honestly, like we are kind of these young guys trying to figure out like how do we not be that? And didn't really know where to go. And my mom was always the mom for all of us, really. It's like I think all of my friends still to this day kind of would view you as mom. And so, yeah, go ahead. You kind of stepped in.
Well, I just stress to you that girls are people too. They have the same feelings you have. They have the same emotions you have. Don't be using girls for whatever. Don't use them.
Yeah.
You know, treat them the way you would want to be treated, and just, I was stressing that they're people too, just like you are.
But even more than stressing that, you made it very practical. Because I remember you took us all out to dinner, and you were kind of like going to show us, like, here's how, like, you can be a gentleman.
Right.
Right? Here's
what you do on a date.
Here's what you do on a date.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
And so you really helped us navigate that kind of stuff, I think, really well. And then into marriage. And Sherri, this was one of the questions that I think you had.
Yes. So you and Adam have always had a really good relationship, a really close relationship. Mm-hmm. And I do remember when we were dating before we were engaged or married, just kind of seeing that relationship and knowing that this was a really good, really close relationship. And having a little bit of concern because I've seen friends who have gone through where, you know, the mother-in-law is just like, it's always this contention between the daughter and, you know, or the wife and the mother-in-law. And that's always been a little bit of a concern. You know, how is this going to work? I've never been a daughter-in-law before, and I don't want to come between what you have with your son, but also I want my own relationship with him and with you. And I just feel like you have handled, now that we've been married for almost 18 years, but you have just, you especially when we were young married, you handled that so well. And I think that that's something that mothers across the board could learn from.
What I did before you guys were married, Adam and I talked every day on the telephone, mm-hmm. sometimes more than once.
Yep.
And I knew once you were married that you were the primary woman in his life. It wasn't me anymore. And I knew that, and I accepted that, and it's the way it should be. And so I consciously stepped aside, and I thought of a Dear Abby letter that you would write. Help, my mother-in-law, my husband talks to his mother every day on the phone. And I didn't want that. I didn't want our relationship to be hindered by me being possessive of his time or his attentions, and I knew that you became the primary woman in his life, and to me that's awesome. To me that's as it should be. That I've done my job, and now it's time to step aside and watch the fruits of my labor bloom, and again, I'm just so proud of the husband he is, and the way he treats you, and how he loves you, and it's just obvious, and I love that. And I think the two of you, your relationship is a wonderful example to everyone who sees it. Just you don't have to preach anything, just the way you are with each other, the way you look at each other, everything, it's just, but I knew my place, and I felt like, my job as a parent of active parenting was over, and I'll always be his mom, but I know I'm not the primary woman in his life anymore, and I shouldn't be. And I'm just so glad that you are. And that doesn't diminish my relationship with Adam at all. As a matter of fact, I think it strengthens it. For him to know that there's not a battle between his wife and his mother.
That he doesn't have to choose.
Right. And so I think it's all a win-win situation.
I agree.
Yeah, me too.
Well, and I love that. I think that we all have, thinking of me and Sherri and Ronnie and Cecilia, like we all have our own relationships with you.
Yeah, yes.
You know what I mean? Like you talk, like we all, and it's not like your relationship with Sherri is just through me. Like you guys each have your own relationship, and you and Cecilia.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks a lot to this. To how you've handled that.
Well, I love you. I love Cecilia. My daughters-in-law you have made my sons happy. You've added to his life in so many ways that how could I not love you? You just made my son happy. And I love that.
Yeah. So let's talk about like keeping in sort of the, like that was sort of like preparing for marriage. How do you handle that? Advice for people getting married. Not necessarily for a parent whose kids are getting married. We kind of covered that. But just they're thinking about entering into marriage. They're thinking about making that decision.
Yeah, quite honestly, Adam, I think you and Sherri could answer that better than I can, because I'm not in a relationship, and it's because I just have been there, done that. I've got the T-shirts. I'm not looking. I wouldn't settle for anything. I think there's a big difference. I think being alone, and I love my life.
Yeah.
And being alone to me is not lonely at all. Lonely is having someone else in the household, and feeling lonely is the worst thing.
Yes.
To feel alone when you've got a partner is not much of a partner in my mind. So
that sounds like the loneliest thing.
Really.
Yeah.
And it is. It's so I'm happy with me and my life, and if someone came along and convinced me my life would be better with them than without them, and it would take some convincing, but I'm open to that.
So you have a pretty good life.
I do have a good life. But I think the two of you, you went into your marriage with so much intentions. You went to counseling, you talked about issues that, we've talked about this before between each other, about how you have friends who are divorcing over issues that the two of you resolved before you ever got married.
Right.
So I think you and Sherri are better equipped to answer that kind of question.
But you said something that I think is really important. I'm so glad you said it. You talked about this issue of settling. Because sometimes I think that people enter into a marriage settling.
Because that's what they're supposed to do. They're at the time of their life where everybody else that they went to school with are getting married. They need to get married, no. But I think if they followed the example the two of you have had, the going through the counseling, making sure that the issues that come up in marriage, which they come up in, finances come up in every relationship if you're living together. Mm-hmm. And to talk about those things. And so many people plan a wedding rather than plan their marriage.
Right.
And to spend that time and energy and money talking about and planning out your marriage.
Right, because the wedding is one day, the marriage is the rest of your life. And
right.
So, what do you want that to look like?
And to end up in a relationship where you settled, or you're just sorry you made that choice. I don't know. Settling to me is a sad thing. Mm-hmm. It's just.
And I think you also said something important. Just, does this person make your life better by being in it?
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing to kind of go into a marriage with too.
Right.
And I think that there's for me and Adam, I think that there's he makes my life better because of who he is and how he treats me and who we are together. Mm-hmm. And my life would be lacking without him, and I know that. So I think that was an important point too that you just said, that not just to get married, but what does this person bring to your life that would or wouldn't be there without them?
Right. And to look for someone to make your life complete is ridiculous.
Yes.
Your life should be
Agreed.
Complete.
Yep.
There should be two complete people coming together and adding to each other, rather than trying to find someone to fix or find someone to
complete you,
change, or to complete you. Right. It's
that's also a lot of pressure on the other person.
Right.
Oh yes.
Yep.
And so let's talk a little about this. I mean, because I think you can go into a relationship or a marriage with all of the boxes checked, but then you get into something and you realize that this is not what it needs to be.
Right.
And so there's also a lot of pressure in today's world, and I think sometimes people feel stuck in situations. They feel like there's no way out. They feel like this is my bed. I've made my bed and I have to sleep in it. But you don't talk about that. What advice would you give to somebody who feels stuck in that kind of situation?
Run.
Yeah, but okay, yes.
Acknowledge the mistake you made. Hopefully you married an adult who, if it's what you're feeling, it's probably what they're feeling as well. If you're not happy, whoever you're with is not happy. That's
not necessarily true, because I think of narcissists. They're very happy in a situation that another person's unhappy, because they're getting all their needs met.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean?
Well, you need to acknowledge that you made a mistake and married a narcissist, and learn the lessons that you learned from that, and not do it again.
Yeah.
But to stay in that situation is only going to get worse and worse and worse. Don't expect it to get better. Mm-hmm. You're not going to change the person. When people show you who they are, believe them. I can't remember who said that. But it's true. People show you who they are, and you think, oh, I can change that. Or they'll love me enough. If they love me enough, they'll change. Or
if this next thing's happened, things will be better. Or if just this happens, they'll be better.
And the thing is with domestic violence, and it just gets worse and worse. The more you put up with it, the worse it's going to get. And so it's the same as settling. Mm-hmm. It's your life. Why would you settle for anything?
Yeah.
and especially things so as important as a life partner. Yeah. Did I answer that question?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Do you view, because, I mean, you and my dad got divorced, but yet the two of you have, and I don't know if we ever talked about this on vlogs or podcasts, your divorce was actually very different because, like, yes, my parents are divorced, but you haven't been like the kind of divorced parents who hate each other or can't be in the same room. Like,
that's something that, I mean, your dad is half of who you are.
sure.
Why would to put him down would be like putting you down. Of course, I think the better half of you came from me.
Sure, the best half, yeah.
But,
So funny.
but to put him down would, in essence, be putting you down. And I never wanted to do that. And I have some, I think the example of being an adult, and I mean, we have shared holiday dinners with your dad and Susan.
Yeah.
We have, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm glad you have a relationship with your dad. There are too many kids out there that don't.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I think that's wrong when people talk bad about their ex-partners to their kids.
Right.
I mean, I've had some things to say with girlfriends
Yeah, sure, of course.
that I talk things over with,
Yep.
but I never would with you.
But
because
divorce for you wasn't failure, right? And I think that's like, sometimes it's like, well, I'd rather stay in a marriage than, like, divorce is failure. But it's like, divorce doesn't have to be failure.
No, it was a moving on.
Yeah, and I think that's a
was,
good way to look at it.
It was this isn't working, and acknowledging that.
Yeah.
And it was healthier for all of you to just not be in
right.
that situation
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, I love that. And I've appreciated, I mean, you know, never feeling like I was put in the middle or had to choose sides or had to...
Yeah, I never wanted you to feel that way.
Yeah, no, I never did. Yeah, and so
That's good.
I've appreciated that. So, kind of moving through life, let's talk about a couple other things. I want to talk about money. Because you mentioned this earlier, growing up, we didn't have money. I mean, we grew up, you know, very under the poverty line. Like, you know, we didn't have a lot when it came to finances. But here's the thing, and Ronnie and I talked about this. Neither of us would have ever known that we didn't grow up without money, because it always felt like life was happy and good, and we had, you know what I mean? Like,
Had everything you needed.
we had everything we needed. Like, as kids, I almost feel like sometimes parents put more pressure on themselves when the kids really don't know. Like, you created a loving, happy, amazing space for us. But part of that was because of how you view money. Like, I feel like money is just like an overflow of who you are as a person. And I have seen you get as much enjoyment out of a $3 box of sidewalk chalk as I have seen some people out of thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of purchases.
Right.
More money out of
More-
it. Or
more joy.
enjoyment.
Yeah.
Yep. Then
A box of sidewalk chalk goes a long way.
Well, and that's the nice thing is, like, my whole life I've always known if I wanted to get mom a gift, they'll just bring a smile to her face. Box of sidewalk chalk.
And it gets used, and to this day, and I'm 75 years old, I have sidewalk chalk in my car
Yeah.
and in my entryway
Yeah.
cupboards. Yeah, it's...
But I feel like that largely comes from the fact that resources were always tight for us. And so the way that they were used were to things that either made memories or brought joy or...
I think the only time I recall of you wishing we had more money was with shoes.
Oh, well, yes.
When you were like 11, you wanted certain brands of shoes.
It was probably the Reebok pumps.
Whatever it was.
I mean, Mom, I
then-
could have jumped so much higher.
But then when you turned 12, you wore a size 12 shoe.
Yep.
when you were 13, you wore a size 13
Yep.
shoe. 14, it was a size 14
I
shoe.
know.
And the only thing in Nordstrom Stalkers were the only shoe in Anchorage that had those sizes.
Yep.
And so you no longer had a choice.
No, I got what they had in stock.
Yeah,
He still does.
Whatever,
Like, it's-
whatever you could find that fit.
Yeah, that was it.
That worked.
That's right. You have a size 14, I'll take it. Sir, you haven't seen it. Doesn't matter. I need a shoe.
The one size 14 you have in your store.
Yeah, I'll take it.
I'll take it.
And that's the only time that's the only thing with shoes that I remember that you wished that, yeah. But we did things like, got tennis balls and tennis rackets, probably from the secondhand store,
Mm-hmm.
and the tennis courts were free. And so we played tennis. We
Bubbles, I remember a lot.
Bubbles, yeah, had bubbles. We sidewalk chalk. I remember one of the best investments I made was a stopwatch, because when you were little, you wanted me to count how long does it take you to run from here to that tree. And you would look, and I
still do that. That's how we're going to end this podcast. We're going to count how...
Hey, Mom, count.
Okay, Mom. Sorry, go ahead.
And sometimes it's like I'd count how long it took you to run there and back again, and then you'd think you could do better, and then you'd see me maybe not paying attention, and Mom, are you counting? But then I got a stopwatch.
Smart.
And you would run and try to beat yourself. And then when you got new shoes, you knew you could run faster in those.
Of course I
And
could.
jump higher.
And but that was, a way of wearing you out so that you'd go home and take a bath and go to sleep.
That sounds right.
But,
That sounds right.
And tennis didn't always work because I hit the ball closer to you. You didn't have to run as much as I did on the tennis court.
Yeah, that's true. I wasn't the best tennis player.
But we always had fun. We always just we laughed every day. We played games every day.
Can you talk for a minute about, because this is one of the things that we have brought into our marriage from you, the enjoyment that you get out of X amount of dollars. So he loves the claw machine.
Like
loves
those claw games where you could like
They're
win
$1.
Yeah.
Yep. Every time you walk into a store that has a claw machine, do you have $1? Do you have dollars?
Do you have $1?
And can you talk about that for a minute?
Well, it's the joy that this dollar brings to you.
Mm-hmm.
And the joy that Adam gets out of $1 in a claw machine is, worth $100 almost.
Mm-hmm.
It's just $1 he spent, but yet it's not the dollar amount, it's the joy you get from whatever it is you're doing.
Right.
And he gets not only the excitement of doing it, but the joy of giving whatever he happens to get, if he happens to get a toy from the claw machine, to give it to the next kid that he sees. So the joy is spread around. That's like with my sidewalk chalk. It has brought joy not only to me, but like I was talking earlier about a festival I was at one time when there was a whole line of kids in line waiting to get their face painted. And kids standing in line waiting is not always a happy sort of situation. And I had sidewalk chalk in my car, and I just went and got sidewalk chalk and started by myself and put the chalk out so all the kids could join in, and they did. And a grown man artist came and made a beautiful, I can't even remember what it was, but it was beautiful. But the kids then waiting in line, as a matter of fact, there was one kid who wanted to finish what he was doing and let the kid behind him in line go first to get his face painted so he could finish his picture he was making with sidewalk chalk. So yeah, it's the joy that it brings. It's it's not the dollar that's spent. And I think when Adam puts $1 in a claw machine, it's worth more than just $1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is something that we've brought in our marriage, and it's been really helpful because there's sometimes that it's like, I don't, it's
I
like,
don't
sure,
need this.
I don't need this, and it's like, it's $7. I don't need it. It's like, yeah, but you have $20 worth of happiness on your face. You know what I mean?
Right
now, it's like, so honestly,
This is a deal.
$7 is a heck of a deal. You get $20 worth of happiness, and I think that's one of the things that we've approached. And I think it's impacted. To be honest with you, I think it's impacted the way that we spend money, not just dollars at claw machines. But
big purchases too, our house, our cars.
Yeah, it's like the type of house that we purchased, which would allow us to live big in other areas like travel and doing things, which are the things that we really care about, making memories, right? Why? Because to us, that's where the joy is.
Yes.
And so it's like it really has impacted our whole life on that.
And that joy, whether it's a travel, whether it's a trip you take, or the claw machine, or giving the gift to the next kid that you see, whatever the joy is, lasts. I mean, it's the toy from the claw machine isn't something that you're interested in. It's the joy of getting it, the joy of giving it away.
Yeah.
It's the joy just stays with you longer than whatever material item you might have. It's whatever brings you joy. And a game from the secondhand store brought us so much laughter and so much joy. And I don't remember if you remember the game Tabloid Teasers.
Absolutely,
or
I
something.
do. Yep.
That was ridiculous headline articles that you say, is this really real?
Right.
And then we had to come up with our own to fool you. Anyway, we
laughed for so
I know it.
Yeah.
We just laughed and laughed, and the joy that I don't know. It's worth it. The joy is what you're looking for.
Not the stuff,
memories,
not the money.
Not the stuff, right. And like with your house, you intentionally bought a townhouse rather than a big single-family home on the hillside, which you could have done, but it would have kept you house poor. It would have kept you in Anchorage rather than on a Disney cruise.
Right.
It would have limited your ability to enjoy so many other things, and you've intentionally, consciously done that. Yeah,
we have. So last question,
okay,
and I think this might tie into what stuff we talked about before, but I have known you for my whole life and I have seen you in lots of different stages of life. I've seen you in marriage to my dad when we lived in Trapper Creek. I've seen you living in Anchorage, working, like you said, job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, who knows how many jobs. I've seen you in, kind of mundane jobs you really enjoyed. I've seen you in Alaska. I've seen you in Colorado. I've seen you in, all of the different stages, even now, battling cancer. Yet, you have remained, it's crazy. You have remained encouraging and hopeful and positive, and you have vibrated high through every situation that I've ever seen you in. How?
And consciously, it's a choice. It's a choice that we all make every instant, and it's a conscious choice. And what are my choices to approach whatever situation from the love side of the fence or from the fear side of the fence? And why choose the fear side of the fence? Because whatever answer I'm going to find, I don't want it to come from the fear side of the fence. So it's a conscious choice. I choose to be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And why not? Why not?
I choose to be happy. Why not? It's good. Yeah, I mean, how do you argue with that?
Yeah.
So, all right, Mom, I love you. Thanks for recording this with us.
I love you too, sweetheart.
It was, this was fun. I love that we got to talk about kids and marriage and relationships and money and life stuff and hard stuff and good stuff.
Kids,
So,
I'd like to add to the kids. Give your kids an allowance.
oh, the pro tip. Let's hear it. Tell the story.
Okay, so the kids always got, and it was the time from they were 7 till they were out of the house. $1 every Friday. They got $1 for however old they were.
Yep.
And I get it. $10 a week is a lot for a 10-year-old. $15 a week is not enough and always supplemented for a 15-year-old. But the deal was, once you're out of school and still living at home, you would start paying me an allowance.
Yep.
For every dollar that you
Yeah, for
your age.
every dollar of her age.
I was 48 when that happened with you.
Yep.
And every Friday I got my $48, and I just loved getting my allowance.
Yep.
And you knew you ate more than that,
Oh, it's a great deal for me.
but it just got you used to paying something for yourself.
Yep.
And I think that was helpful in your transition to moving out. I remember some friends of yours over one time who were, and this was after you bought that ridiculous new off the showroom floor car, and you were paying $800 a month for car payment and
How much was I paying?
insurance. $800 a month.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the car payment was like $450 or $400.
And then insurance.
And insurance was basically the other half of that.
Yeah, and that was so
Okay, didn't make the best choices, Mom. We get it.
yeah. So, but I remember some friends of yours were over telling you or talking to you about moving out and into either sharing with them or
Yep.
I don't remember what this, and you were talking about concern that you wouldn't be able to make rent payment because you had your car and insurance payment. And they said, no, you'll always make rent. It's laundry soap you have to worry about.
Yeah.
And I just laughed thinking of them doing their laundry with no soap.
Yep.
Gosh.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that car.
but-
What a stupid purchase.
I know it.
But you learned.
I did learn. Yeah.
Yeah, that was... yeah,
I think everybody's entitled to one of those
that,
purchases. You're just like,
that-
what was I thinking?
and I know you really enjoyed driving it while you did, but it really set you back for a few years.
Oh yeah, absolutely did.
And yeah, that's an issue with your dad that I had.
Yeah. Well, but in some ways, like that car, and this is actually a really good example of what we talked about. That car, in some ways, was me testing to see, like, I knew that it was a bad financial decision. I knew that it didn't make sense, but it was just so freaking cool. And the problem is that what I learned through that car was that saying yes to that car meant that I said no to so many other things
Yeah.
that were so much more important.
Right, I
And
know.
it didn't just set me back financially, it set me back in lots of other ways.
Well, I'm glad you learned that lesson from it. Then good. That's,
Oh, sure, absolutely. I don't think there's a way I couldn't have learned that lesson from that stupid car. I had almost as much audio money in audio speakers on the inside as I had in the car. Why? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. It's so stupid.
But you were so cool driving that car.
Oh man, debt is great.
What was it? It was
It's so dumb.
this shiny blue.
It was a Pontiac Grand Am.
Yeah.
Right when they released, Sherri, you don't have to laugh at me. Right when they released this new body style, it was blue and had a big like Alpine audio sticker in the back window because the car was like all Alpine stuff. Sorry, it was very cool. But now, but think of how different it was. Like as a kid, those are the decisions that I made. But now as an adult, we pay cash for cars because I want no debt.
We don't want a car payment.
I don't want a car payment. You know what I mean? It's like, give me the car that is like 6-7 years old that I can pay cash for today.
Right.
You know, like give me the house that is way under what we can afford because it lets us live life. Like I don't know, like it.
Both of our cars are 14 years old. They still run, and we don't have a car payment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
And
just-
your insurance isn't sky high
Uh-huh.
because of the
Yep.
kind of car you're driving,
Ugh.
the sports car. Yeah, well, I'm glad you learned your lesson.
I learned my lesson, Mom.
That's
You
it.
can sleep peacefully tonight knowing that I agree with you that was a stupid purchase. So
well, good.
All right. Well, friends, thanks for listening, and we will see you on the next LeggLife podcast. Bye.
Bye.